The fog rolled thick across the moorlands of Hampshire that October morning, swallowing the landscape in grey silence. Damien Veilhart, Duke of Ironmore, urged his stallion forward through the mist, his jaw set in grim determination. Every instinct screamed that this journey was folly, riding alone into enemy territory at the summons of the man who had spent 2 decades trying to destroy him. Yet here he was, crossing into Everthorn lands like a fool walking into a trap. At 32, Damien had survived things that would have broken lesser men. Battlefields across the continent had forged him into something hard and unyielding. The War Duke, they called him, in London's drawing rooms, always with a mixture of fear and fascination. He had learned early that sentiment was weakness, that mercy was dangerous, and that the only way to survive was to be harder, colder, and more ruthless than one's enemies. Lucien Everthorn, Marquis of Thornfield, had been his enemy longer than anyone else still breathing. The rivalry between their families stretched back before Damien was born, a poisonous legacy of political betrayals, ruined business ventures, and personal slights that had festered into something almost biblical in its hatred. Damien's father had died cursing the Everthorn name. Lucien's eldest son had perished in a duel that everyone whispered the Veilharts had orchestrated. The wounds ran deep, carved into bone and blood. So when the messenger had arrived at Ironmore 3 days ago with Lucien's urgent summons, Damien's first instinct had been to burn the letter unread. But something in the messenger's face, genuine fear mixed with pity, had stayed his hand, and the words when he finally read them were not what he expected. Come at once. I am dying. There is a matter of honor we must settle before I depart this world. I know you hate me, Veilhart, but I appeal to whatever shred of decency remains in that stone heart of yours. Come alone. Now, as Everthorn Manor emerged from the fog like a Gothic spectre, all grey stone and leaded windows, Damien felt the familiar weight of his pistol against his ribs. He was many things, but he was not a fool. If this was an ambush, he would not go down without taking several of them with him. A pale-faced butler met him at the entrance, bowing low. Your Grace. His lordship is expecting you. Please, this way. The house was silent as a tomb, servants moving like ghosts through corridors that reeked of sickness and approaching death. Damien followed the butler up a grand staircase, noting the faded grandeur, the paintings with their subjects' eyes seeming to follow his progress with accusation. This house held memories of every slight, every betrayal between their families. The very walls seemed to hate him. They stopped before a door at the end of a long hallway. The butler knocked softly, then opened it, gesturing for Damien to enter. The curtains were drawn, leaving the room in shadow, despite the morning hour. It took a moment for Damien's eyes to adjust, and when they did, he barely recognized the man in the bed. Lucien Everthorn had always been formidable, tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of a man who commanded empires. At 47, he should have been in his prime. Instead, the figure propped against the pillows was a shadow, flesh hanging from bones, skin the color of old parchment. Only the eyes remained sharp, burning with the fierce intelligence that had made him such a dangerous adversary. You came. Lucien's voice was a rasp, nothing like the commanding tone that had once filled the House of Lords. I confess, I wagered against it. Damien remained by the door, every muscle tensed. Your messenger said it was a matter of honor. I came to hear what the Marquis of Thornfield could possibly know of such a thing. A ghost of a smile crossed Lucien's wasted face. Still the same cold bastard. Good. I would not trust a man who suddenly developed sentiment. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound that seemed to shake his entire frame. When he recovered, he gestured weakly to a chair. Sit, Veilhart. I have not summoned you here to kill you, though I confess the thought has crossed my mind more than once over the years. The feeling, Damien said flatly, not moving from his position, is entirely mutual. I am dying. Lucien stated it as simple fact. The physicians give me weeks at most. Consumption, they call it, though I suspect it matters little what name they give to death. He fixed Damien with that burning gaze. I did not ask you here to make peace. What lies between us cannot be undone by pretty words and deathbed confessions. I asked you here because I have a daughter. Something cold slithered down Damien's spine. He knew vaguely that Lucien had a daughter, the result of a late marriage to a woman who had died in childbirth. But the girl had been kept hidden away in the country, far from London society, and further still from anything involving the Valahart family. Lady Juliet, Lucien continued, is 19 years old. She is intelligent, spirited, and entirely unprepared for what awaits her when I am gone. His hands clenched on the coverlet. I have made many enemies, Valahart. You know this better than anyone. Men who would use her, hurt her, destroy her simply to spit on my grave. I have no son to protect her, no brothers. The relatives who remain are vultures circling, waiting to pick apart her inheritance. What? Damien said slowly. Does this have to do with me? Lucien's laugh was bitter. Everything and nothing. You are the last man in England who should care about the fate of Lucien Everthorne's daughter. And yet... He paused, struggling for breath. You are also the only man I can trust. Trust? The word came out sharper than Damien intended. You trust me? With this, yes. Lucien's eyes never wavered. You are many things, Valahart. Cruel, yes. Ruthless, certainly. But you are a man of honor. When you give your word, you keep it. I have watched you for years, and that is the one thing I know to be true. He struggled to sit up straighter. I'm begging you to take Juliet as your ward. Protect her. Keep her safe from the wolves that will come. I know you hate me. I know what I have cost your family, but she is innocent in all of this. She does not deserve to pay for my sins. The request was so absurd that for a moment Damien could only stare. You want me, your sworn enemy, to become guardian to your daughter. I want the one man in England whose word is worth more than gold to swear he will protect her. Lucien's voice cracked. I am dying, Valahart. Soon I will face whatever judgment awaits me, but I will not leave her alone in this world without protection. You have no idea what it is to be a father, to know you are leaving your child vulnerable to every predator and fortune hunter in the realm. I should refuse. Damien's voice was ice. I should let you die knowing she will be at the mercy of those same enemies you cultivated so carefully. You could. Lucien met his gaze steadily. It would be fair retribution for everything I have done to you. But you will not, because beneath all that ice, you remember what it is to be honorable. Your father raised you better than that. May he rest in peace. The mention of his father, dead these 10 years, struck something deep. Damien's jaw tightened. Do not speak of my father. Why not? He was a better man than either of us. Lucien coughed again, blood flecking his lips. I will be dead within the month, Valahart. This feud dies with me. But Juliet lives. She deserves that chance. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Please, I am begging you. Man to man, not enemy to enemy. Protect my daughter as if she were your own blood. Swear it on your honor. Silence filled the room, broken only by Lucien's labored breathing and the distant ticking of a clock. Damien's mind raced through 1,000 reasons to refuse, to walk away, to let the Everthorne line end in ruins as it deserved. But beneath the ice, beneath the armor he had built so carefully, something stirred. Perhaps it was the raw desperation in Lucien's eyes, the look of a father reduced to his most primal fear. Perhaps it was the memory of his own father, and the lessons about honor that had been beaten into him alongside swordsmanship. Perhaps it was simply that he was tired of hating, tired of carrying this poison. If I do this, Damien heard himself say, she becomes my responsibility entirely. You do not get to dictate terms from beyond the grave. I will protect her as I see fit. Hope flared in Lucien's eyes. You will do it? Against all reason and wisdom, yes. Damien stepped closer to the bed. I swear on my honor as Duke of Ironmore that I will protect Lady Juliet Everthorne from harm. She will want for nothing. No one will touch her while I draw breath. The relief that washed over Lucien's face was transformative. For a moment, he looked almost human, almost redeemed. Thank you, he whispered. You cannot know what this means. I know exactly what it means. Damien's voice was hard. It means I am a damned fool. Perhaps. A weak smile. But an honorable one. That is more than either of us can claim to have been for most of our lives. He reached out with a shaking hand. She will fight you at first. She has heard stories about you, none of them flattering, but she is a good girl. Give her time. Damien looked at the offered hand for a long moment before taking it. The grip was weak, the hand cold. This was not the vigorous enemy of his youth, but a dying man making peace the only way he knew how. One more thing, Lucian said as Damien turned to leave. "Do not let her marry some fortune-hunting bastard who only wants her inheritance. She deserves better. She deserves to be loved for who she is, not what she possesses." "That," Damien said dryly, "should not be difficult. I imagine most men will be too terrified of me to court her at all." "Good." Lucian's eyes were already closing, exhaustion claiming him. "Let them be terrified. Just be kind to her, Veilheart. She has already lost so much." Damien left without another word, his mind churning. What had he just done? What oath had he sworn? As he rode back across the moors toward Ironmoor, the fog seemed thicker, the path less certain. He had no idea that he had just sealed his own fate as surely as Lucian Everthorne's deathbed had sealed his. 3 weeks later, a black-bordered letter arrived at Ironmoor. Lucian Everthorne, Marquess of Thornfield, had departed this world. The funeral would be held in 3 days' time. And 1 week after that, Lady Juliet Everthorne would arrive at Ironmoor as ward to the Duke. Damien stood in his study, the letter in his hand, and wondered what storm was about to break over his carefully ordered life. The day Lady Juliet Everthorne arrived at Ironmoor, the sky wept. Rain lashed the ancient stones of the ducal estate, turning the gravel drive into a river and the moors beyond into a grey wasteland. Damien watched from the library window as the carriage made its slow approach, black as a hearse pulled by horses that steamed in the cold October air. He had spent the week preparing, ensuring that rooms were aired and made ready, that staff understood their new mistress was to be treated with every courtesy, that everything was perfect. It had been easier to focus on logistics than to contemplate the absurdity of the situation. Lucian Everthorne's daughter living under his roof. His responsibility, his ward. The carriage rolled to a stop before the main entrance. Damien set down his brandy and made his way to the grand hall, arriving just as his butler opened the doors. A footman hurried forward with an umbrella, but the door to the carriage opened before he could reach it. And then she was there, stepping down into the rain with her head held high, and Damien forgot to breathe. Lady Juliet Everthorne was not beautiful in the conventional, simpering way of London debutantes. She was something far more dangerous. Dressed in unrelieved black mourning, she stood in the downpour like some Gothic heroine from the novels his late mother had favoured. Her hair, dark as midnight, was pulled back severely from a face of classical proportions, high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that even from a distance blazed with emerald fire. She was tall for a woman, willow slim, but there was nothing fragile about the way she carried herself. She looked like a queen surveying conquered territory. She looked like her father. And she looked directly at Damien with an expression that could have frozen the rain itself. "Your Grace." Her voice carried across the courtyard, clear and cold. "I apologize for arriving in such dreadful weather. I trust my presence does not inconvenience you overmuch." There was acid beneath the polite words. Damien descended the steps, gesturing away the footman with the umbrella. If she could stand in the rain, so could he. "Lady Juliet." He bowed with the precise degree of formality due to a marquess's daughter. "You are most welcome at Ironmoor. Please come inside before you catch your death." "How considerate." She moved past him with a rustle of sodden skirts. "I confess, I expected the infamous War Duke to be less concerned with such niceties." Damien followed her into the hall where she stood dripping on the marble floor, surveying her surroundings with a critical eye. Up close, she was even more striking. Her skin was pale as porcelain, her features sharp and elegant, and those eyes, they held grief, yes, but also a fierce intelligence and something else. Defiance. Challenge. "Mrs. Thornby," Damien addressed his housekeeper, "please show Lady Juliet to her rooms. I am certain she wishes to rest after her journey." "I'm not tired." Juliet's gaze swung back to him. "I would speak with you, Your Grace, if you can spare a moment from your undoubtedly pressing affairs." She made it sound like an accusation. Damien felt something stir beneath his carefully maintained control. Irritation, perhaps, or amusement. He could not quite decide which. "Of course, Mrs. Thornby, have tea sent to the library." "Lady Juliet, if you would accompany me." He led her through the halls of Ironmoor, acutely aware of her presence behind him. The house suddenly felt different with her in it, smaller somehow, despite its cavernous rooms. He could feel her taking everything in, judging, comparing it perhaps to her beloved Everthorne Manor. The library was his sanctuary, Walls of books collected over generations, leather chairs by the fire, the smell of old paper and wood smoke. He gestured for her to sit. She remained standing. "I want to make something clear, Your Grace. I did not ask to come here. I did not ask for your protection. Had my father consulted me, I would have told him this entire arrangement was absurd. And yet," Damien said quietly, "here you are. Here I am." Her chin lifted. "Because my father, on his deathbed, extracted a promise from you. Because he believed in his final days that you were a man of honor." She stepped closer, and Damien caught the scent of rain and something else, lavender perhaps, or roses. "Are you, Your Grace? Are you a man of honor? Or are you simply honoring a vow to torment me as revenge against my father?" The accusation stung more than it should have. "Your father and I were enemies," Damien said, his voice harder than intended. "That is no secret. But he was correct in one thing. I am a man of my word. I swore to protect you, and I will. Protect me." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "From what precisely? From fortune hunters, from society, or from you? From anything and anyone who might wish you harm?" Damien met her blazing gaze steadily. "Including myself, if that is your concern. You are my ward, Lady Juliet. That places you under my protection and my care. Nothing more." How reassuring. She turned away, moving to examine the books that lined the walls. "And what does this protection entail? Am I to be locked away in this fortress, forbidden from society, made to live like some shameful secret?" "You are in mourning," Damien pointed out. "Society expects you to remain secluded for the appropriate period regardless. After that we shall see." She whirled on him. "After that we shall see. I am not a child to be managed, Your Grace. I am 19 years old and the daughter of a marquis. I have a fortune of my own, an estate, a position in society, all of which makes you a target." Damien's patience was wearing thin. "Your father understood this, even if you do not. You are young, wealthy, and alone. Without protection, you would be devoured by the first clever scoundrel who paid you pretty compliments." "How flattering that you think me so foolish." "I think you are naive," Damien said bluntly. "There is a difference. You have been sheltered all your life, kept away from London, protected by your father's name and power. That protection died with him. Now you have only mine." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Fear, perhaps, or uncertainty, but she hid it quickly behind renewed defiance. "And if I do not want your protection, then you are an even greater fool than I feared." Damien moved closer, and to her credit, she did not retreat. "This is not a game, Lady Juliet. Your father made enemies, powerful ones, men who would hurt you simply to strike at his memory. I gave my word to prevent that. I intend to keep it, with or without your cooperation." They stood facing each other, the air between them crackling with tension. Juliet's chest rose and fell with agitation. Her eyes bright with unshed tears she refused to let fall. Damien found himself noticing things he should not. The delicate line of her jaw, the way her lower lip trembled slightly before she caught it between her teeth, the pulse beating frantically at her throat. She was beautiful and dangerous and absolutely forbidden. "I loved my father," she said finally, her voice breaking slightly. "He was all I had, and now I am here, in the house of the man he called his greatest enemy, dependent on your mercy. Do you have any idea how that feels?" Something cracked in Damien's chest. "No," he admitted. "I do not, but I can imagine it is not easy." "Not easy?" A single tear escaped, trailing down her cheek, before she angrily wiped it away. "It is impossible. Every instinct tells me to hate you. Every story my father ever told painted you as a villain. And yet here you are, offering protection, offering sanctuary, and I do not know what to believe. Believe this." Damien's voice gentled despite himself. "Whatever lay between your father and myself is finished. It died with him. You are not your father, and I will not punish you for his sins or mine. While you are under my roof, you are safe. You have my word on that." She searched his face, looking for deception and finding none. Finally, she nodded once. "Very well, Your Grace. I shall endeavor not to be too great a burden upon your hospitality." "You are not a burden." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. You are my responsibility, yes, but that does not make you unwelcome here." A knock at the door interrupted whatever she might have said. Mrs. Thornby entered with tea, along with a maid carrying towels. "Pardon me, Your Grace, but Lady Juliet is soaked through. Perhaps she should change before taking tea." Juliet looked down at herself, seeming to notice for the first time that she was indeed dripping onto the carpet. A faint flush coloured her cheeks. "Yes, of course, forgive me, There is nothing to forgive," Damien gestured to Mrs. Thornby. "Please show Lady Juliet to her rooms. We can speak again at dinner, if that suits you." Juliet nodded, suddenly looking very young and very tired. "Thank you, Your Grace." As she left, Damien found himself staring at the door long after it closed. This was going to be far more complicated than he had anticipated. Far more complicated and far more dangerous. Because Lady Juliet Everthorne, with her blazing eyes and her father's stubborn pride, and her devastating beauty hidden beneath morning black, was already under his skin in a way that should have been impossible, and the oath he had sworn, to protect her, to keep her safe, to treat her with honor, suddenly felt like the most difficult promise he had ever made. The first month passed in careful formality. Juliet kept to her rooms for the most part, emerging only for meals that were conducted in near silence. Damien found himself watching her across the length of his dining table, noting how she pushed food around her plate more than ate it, how shadows darkened the skin beneath her eyes, how she grew thinner despite Mrs. Thornby's best efforts. She was grieving, he reminded himself, grieving and alone and trapped in the house of a man she had been raised to fear. What else did he expect? But as November arrived with its bitter winds and early darkness, something shifted. Perhaps it was the isolation of Ironmoor, set on its wild moors far from London society. Perhaps it was simple necessity. One could not maintain such rigid formality when one was the only two people of consequence in a household. Or perhaps it was something neither of them wanted to name. The change began, as many things do, with something small. Damien was in the library one evening after dinner, reviewing estate correspondence, when he heard the pianoforte in the music room. He had not known Juliet played. The melody was Beethoven, he thought, though he was no expert. It was beautiful and melancholy, each note perfectly placed, and it drew him like a lodestone. He found himself standing in the doorway, watching her play. She wore grey now instead of black. Her mourning was easing into half-mourning, and the colour made her skin luminous. Her eyes were closed, her entire being focused on the music, and for the first time since she had arrived, she looked at peace. Damien meant to leave before she noticed him. Instead, he stayed rooted, unable to look away. There was something hypnotic about watching her play, about seeing this glimpse of who she was when she forgot to be guarded. The piece ended. Juliet's hands fell to her lap, and she opened her eyes and saw him. "Your Grace." She started to rise. "I apologize. I did not mean to disturb." "Please," he stepped forward. "Do not stop on my account." That was beautifully played. She settled back onto the bench, uncertainty crossing her features. "My father hired the finest tutors. Music was one of the few accomplishments he insisted upon. He had good taste then." Damien found himself moving closer, drawn by some force he could not name. "Will you play something else?" "If you wish." Her fingers found the keys again, and this time it was something lighter, a Mozart sonata that filled the room with crystalline notes. Damien sank into a nearby chair, letting the music wash over him. It had been so long since there was music in Ironmoor. His mother had loved the pianoforte, but she had been gone these 15 years, and the instrument had sat silent ever since. When the piece ended, Juliet turned to him. "You look sad, Your Grace." "Do I?" He had not realized his expression had slipped. "Forgive me. Your playing brought back memories. My mother was quite accomplished at the pianoforte." "Was?" Juliet's voice softened. "She has passed? When I was 17. A fever that the physicians could not break." It surprised him how easily the words came. He rarely spoke of his mother. She would have been glad to hear this room filled with music again. Something shifted in Juliet's expression, the first crack in her armor. "I am sorry for your loss. To lose a parent so young, I cannot imagine." "You lost your mother as well," Damien pointed out gently. "At birth, if I recall correctly. I never knew her, so it is different." Juliet turned back to the pianoforte, her fingers trailing silently over the keys. My father kept a portrait of her in his study. She was very beautiful. He used to tell me I had her eyes. You do. The words escaped before Damien could stop them. When Juliet looked at him questioningly, he added quickly, I saw the portrait once, years ago. You resemble her greatly. A faint smile touched her lips. That is perhaps the kindest thing you have said to me since I arrived. I have not been unkind, surely. Not unkind, no. Simply formal. Cold, even. She met his gaze directly. You treat me as a duty, Your Grace, an obligation to be managed. The accusation struck home because it was true. You are my ward, he said carefully. There are proprieties. Proprieties. She rose from the bench, moving to stand before the fire. Yes, I suppose there are. The War Duke must maintain his reputation for coldness and control. Heaven forbid anyone should see that you are capable of human warmth. That is unfair. Is it? She turned to face him, the firelight catching in her hair, turning it to dark flame. You have been nothing but correct in every interaction we have had. Polite, proper, absolutely without emotion. Tell me, Your Grace, do you feel anything at all? Or did those battlefields truly turn you to stone as London whispers? Damien stood, his control cracking. You know nothing of what I have seen or done. You have no right to judge. I have every right. Her eyes blazed. I am trapped here, dependent on you, living in this mausoleum where everything is cold and silent and perfect. Do you know what that is like? To be surrounded by ice day after day, to never see warmth or kindness, or even basic human connection. I have shown you kindness. His voice was harder than intended. I have given you a home protection. You have given me a prison. The words burst from her. Beautiful, luxurious, but a prison nonetheless. I have lost my father, my home, everything familiar. And now I am here with a man who looks at me as if I am a problem to be solved, rather than a person who is grieving. The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. Damien had been so focused on propriety, on maintaining distance, that he had failed to see what she needed. Not a guardian who kept her at arm's length, but simple human compassion. You are right. The admission came hard. I have been distant. I apologize, Lady Juliet. That was not my intention. She stared at him, seemingly shocked by the apology. I did not expect you to admit fault. Why not? I am not infallible. Damien moved closer, drawn by something he could not name. Your father asked me to protect you. He did not ask me to make you miserable. If I have done so, then I have failed in my duty. I am not miserable, she said quietly. Merely lonely. This house is so large and so empty, and I feel as though I am the only living thing in it sometimes. You are not alone. The words came more gently than Damien intended. I am here, and while I may not be skilled at comfort or warmth, I can try to be better, if you will permit it. Juliet studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. I should like that, Your Grace, very much. Damien. The name escaped before he could stop it. When we are private, you may call me Damien. The formality grows tiresome. Her eyes widened. That would not be proper. Propriety, Damien said dryly, is overrated, particularly when there is no one here to observe it. A real smile touched her lips then, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, chasing away the shadows, making her look young and alive and heart-stoppingly beautiful. Very well, Damien. She tested the name carefully, as if tasting something forbidden. And you may call me Juliet, if you wish. I wish it very much. He bowed, suddenly formal again. I shall leave you to your music, but perhaps... Would you play again tomorrow evening? I find I have missed having music in this house. I would be glad to. Her smile widened. And perhaps you might join me. Do you play any instrument? I am competent at the violin, though nowhere near your skill. Then we shall play together. A duet. Juliet's eyes sparkled with something like mischief. Unless the War Duke is afraid of a simple musical collaboration? I fear nothing, Damien said, rising to the challenge in her tone. Certainly not music. We shall see. She returned to the pianoforte, her fingers finding the keys again. Good night, Damien. Good night, Juliet. He left her playing, the sound following him through the halls. Something had shifted between them tonight. The ice was beginning to crack, and Damien was not certain whether that development was something to celebrate or fear. After that evening, the dynamic between them changed like spring thawing winter. They began to dine together with actual conversation instead of silence. Damien found himself telling her about the estate, about the tenants and their concerns, about the challenges of managing lands so far from London. Juliet, in turn, shared memories of her father during his better days, before illness claimed him. She spoke of her childhood at Everthorne Manor, of the books she loved, of dreams she had harbored of someday visiting Italy or Greece. But those were girlish fancies, she said one evening over dinner. Father would never have permitted such travel. He believed a woman's place was in England managing her household. And what do you believe? Damien asked, genuinely curious. She considered the question seriously. I believe a woman should be permitted to see the world if she wishes, to experience art and culture firsthand, not merely through books. Is that terribly scandalous of me? No. Damien found himself smiling. Merely honest, and there is nothing scandalous about honesty. Their evening musical duets became a cherished ritual. Damien unearthed his violin from where it had lain unused for years, and they worked through simple pieces together, laughing at wrong notes and awkward transitions. Juliet was a patient teacher when he struggled with a passage, and she seemed genuinely delighted when they managed to play something through without mistakes. You are better than you claimed, she said after a particularly successful run through a Handel piece. I suspect the Warduke has been hiding his talents. Or perhaps, Damien countered, I simply have an excellent teacher. The compliment made her flush with pleasure, and Damien found himself wanting to say more things that would make her smile like that. They began taking walks together across the moors, despite the November cold. Juliet loved the wild landscape, so different from the manicured gardens of her childhood home. Damien taught her to identify different birds, to read the weather in the clouds, to find the ancient paths that crossed the moorland. It is beautiful here, she said one afternoon, standing on a hilltop, with the wind whipping her cloak around her. Fierce and wild, but beautiful, rather like you, I suppose. Damien laughed, a real laugh, rusty from disuse. I am not certain whether that is a compliment or an insult. Both, perhaps. She grinned at him. You are rather fierce, you know. When I first arrived, I thought you were made entirely of ice and sharp edges, but you are not so cold as you pretend. Careful, Lady Juliet. Such observations might damage my reputation irreparably. Oh, I shall keep your secret, Your Grace. Her eyes danced with mischief. I would not want London to discover that the Warduke is capable of smiling. Their easy banter felt natural, comfortable. Damien could not remember the last time he had enjoyed someone's company so thoroughly. Juliet was intelligent and quick-witted, able to match him point for point in their discussions of books and politics and everything else. She challenged him, made him think, made him see things from perspectives he had never considered. She also, he was beginning to realize, made him feel things he had no business feeling. It started innocently enough, a hand at her elbow to steady her on uneven ground. Standing close while examining a book together in the library, their shoulders brushing. The way his heart lifted when he heard her laugh, the fact that he found himself thinking of her constantly, wondering what she was doing, whether she was content, what might make her smile. He told himself it was merely the satisfaction of fulfilling his duty well, that he was glad to see her healing from her grief, to see her coming alive again in this isolated place, that the warmth in his chest when she looked at him was nothing more than friendship. He was lying to himself, and on some level he knew it. The realization struck him one December morning when he woke before dawn, unable to sleep. He had been dreaming of Juliet, innocent dreams, merely conversations and laughter, but they left him with a yearning that was anything but innocent. He found himself in the stables before he quite realized where he was going, saddling his stallion in the pre-dawn darkness. He needed to ride, to clear his head, to escape the confines of the house where her presence seemed to fill every room, even when she was not there. But when he emerged from the stables, he found her there in the courtyard, wrapped in a heavy cloak, watching him. I could not sleep either, she said quietly. May I come with you? He should have refused, should have maintained distance, propriety, all the things that had been crumbling for weeks now. Instead, he heard himself say, I will have your mare saddled. They rode out across the moors as dawn broke, turning the sky gold and rose. The ground was hard with frost, the air sharp enough to sting lungs. Juliet kept pace with him easily. Her father had taught her to ride well, and when they reached the highest point of Ironmoor land, they both reined in. The view was spectacular. Below them, the estate spread like a kingdom, and beyond that, the moors rolled on toward a horizon painted in winter fire. "This is magnificent," Juliet breathed. "I have never seen anything so beautiful." Damien was not looking at the view. He was looking at her, at the way the dawn light caught in her hair, at the flush the cold had painted across her cheeks, at the wonder in her eyes, and he realized with a clarity that was almost painful, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And he wanted her, not just with the simple physical desire a man might feel for a beautiful woman. He wanted all of her, her sharp mind and quick wit, her laughter and her rare moments of vulnerability, the way she challenged him and made him feel alive in ways he had forgotten were possible. He wanted to know every thought in her head, every dream in her heart. He wanted the right to stand beside her always, to protect her not out of duty, but because she was his to protect. The realization terrified him. "Damien," Juliet's concerned voice broke through his thoughts. "Is something wrong? You look strange." "No." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Nothing is wrong. We should return. It grows cold." But as they rode back to Ironmoor, Damien knew everything had changed. The oath he had made to Lucienne Everthorne, to protect his daughter, to keep her safe, to treat her with honor, was now the greatest threat to his own peace of mind. Because how did one honor a vow when every instinct screamed to claim the very woman he had sworn to protect? Winter settled over Ironmoor with a vengeance. Snow blanketed the moors, transforming the landscape into something from a fairy story. The house, so vast and cold when Juliet had first arrived, now felt warm and intimate, sealed against the elements with blazing fires in every hearth. And within those walls, the tension between Damien and Juliet grew like a living thing. It was in every glance that lasted too long, every accidental touch that sent electricity through both of them, every conversation that danced around things neither dared to say. They were playing a dangerous game, both aware of it, neither willing to stop. Juliet felt it acutely, the way her heart raced when Damien entered a room, the way her skin burned where his fingers had brushed hers while passing a book, the way she found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, memorizing the hard planes of his face, the way his jaw tightened when he was frustrated, the rare smiles that transformed him from forbidding to devastating. She knew it was wrong. He was her guardian, her father's former enemy, a man 10 years her senior who had taken her in out of duty. She should be grateful for his protection and nothing more, but gratitude was not what made her breath catch when he smiled at her. Gratitude was not what kept her awake at night, imagining things a proper young lady should never imagine, and gratitude certainly was not what made her want to smooth away the lines of care that marked his brow, to make him laugh more, to see what passion might look like in those ice-blue eyes that were beginning to thaw when they looked at her. She was falling in love with him, had been falling for weeks if she was honest, and it was going to destroy her. Damien was no better. He had lost the battle with himself somewhere around Christmas, when Juliet had given him a simple gift, a new leather binding for his favorite volume of poetry, which she had noticed was falling apart. The gesture had been thoughtful, personal, and it had cracked something in his chest that he could not repair. He found himself seeking her out constantly, inventing reasons to be near her, teaching her to play chess by the fire, their heads bent close over the board, reading aloud to her in the library, watching her face as she listened, standing behind her at the pianoforte, ostensibly to turn pages, but really just to be close, to breathe in the scent of her hair, to feel the warmth of her presence. He knew he was being reckless, knew he was crossing lines that should never be crossed, but he could not seem to stop himself. She drew him like a moth to flame, and he was burning up from the inside. The breaking point came on a January night, when snow fell thick and fast, sealing them in completely. They had dined together as usual, the conversation flowing easily. Damien had made her laugh with a story about a tenant's escaped pigs, and the sound had filled him with a dangerous warmth. After dinner they had retired to the music room, but neither felt like playing. Instead, they sat before the fire, comfortable in silence. "Tell me something," Juliet said suddenly. "Something true. Something no one else knows." Damien looked at her questioningly. She was curled in her chair, wrapped in a shawl, the firelight playing across her features. She looked impossibly young and impossibly beautiful, and he wanted to tell her everything. "What prompted this?" he asked instead. "I have been here for 3 months," she said quietly, "and I feel as though I know you better than anyone I have ever known, and yet there are still parts of you that remain hidden. You keep yourself locked away, Damien, even from me. Some things are better left hidden. Why? Because they are painful? Because you think showing vulnerability makes you weak?" She leaned forward, her eyes searching his. "You know my secrets. You know my fears, my dreams, the stupid little things that make me happy. But you give me nothing in return. Is that fair?" "No." The admission came hard. "But I am not certain what you want from me." "The truth." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Just once, tell me something true, something that matters." Damien stared into the fire, his mind racing. What could he tell her? That he thought of her constantly? That the oath he had made to her father now felt like a chain binding him? That every day it grew harder to remember why he had to maintain distance? "I was not always like this," he heard himself say. "Cold and controlled. When I was young, I felt things intensely. Too intensely," my father said. "He worried it would make me weak." "You are not weak." Juliet's voice was fierce. "No, but I learned to be hard." Damien's jaw tightened. "The war did that. Watching men die, making choices that cost lives, learning that sentiment was a luxury that could get people killed. So I buried everything soft in me, built walls, became the war duke that London whispers about." "And now?" Juliet asked gently. "Are you still buried behind those walls?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something cracked. "No," he said roughly, "not anymore. You have made that impossible." The words hung between them, too revealing, too raw. Juliet's eyes widened, her lips parting in surprise. "Damien, you asked for truth." He stood abruptly, unable to sit still. "There it is. You have got under my skin, Juliet. Made me feel things I have not felt in years. Made me remember what it is to want something beyond duty and honor, and all the cold certainties I have built my life upon. What do you want?" Her voice trembled. "Everything. You. Things I have no right to want." "Why?" She rose, moving toward him. "Why do you have no right?" "Because I am your guardian. Because your father trusted me to protect you, not—" He broke off, unable to finish. "Not what? Desire me? Want me?" Juliet stopped directly before him, close enough to touch. "Do you truly think I am unaware? Do you think I have not noticed the way you look at me? The way your hand lingers when you help me from a carriage? The way you find reasons to be near me?" "Juliet, do not what? Speak the truth that we both know?" Her eyes blazed. "I am not a child, Damien. I am a woman grown, and I know what I feel. You do not know what you are saying." But his voice lacked conviction. "Do I not?" She reached up, her hand coming to rest over his heart. He could feel it thundering against her palm. "Tell me you feel nothing. Tell me this is all in my imagination. Tell me you do not lie awake at night thinking of me the way I think of you." "I cannot." The words were torn from him. "Blast it, Juliet, I cannot lie to you." "Then stop fighting this." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Stop being so honorable and so dutiful and just feel. For once, let yourself feel." "If I do—" He captured her hand, holding it against his chest. "If I let myself feel, I will not be able to stop. Do you understand that? I have spent months holding myself in check, maintaining distance. But if you push me past this point, there is no going back." "Good." Her free hand came up to his face, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. "I do not want to go back. I want to go forward. With you. Your father. My father is dead." Tears shone in her eyes. "And I think he knew. I think when he asked you to protect me, he knew what might happen. Why else would he choose you, of all people? His greatest enemy? Unless he saw something in you that I am only now beginning to see." "What?" Damien's voice was hoarse. "That beneath all your ice and control, you are a man who loves deeply, who protects fiercely, who would give everything for those he cares for." Her thumb brushed his lower lip, and he shuddered. "A man I could love. A man I already love." The confession shattered the last of his control. "Juliet!" "Damien, please." She rose on her toes, bringing her lips close to his. "Stop fighting. Just this once, let yourself have what you want." He should push her away, should remember honor, duty, propriety, should be the man Lucian Everthorne trusted with his dying breath. Instead, he surrendered. His mouth crashed down on hers, and the world caught fire. All the weeks of tension, of denied desire, of careful control exploded into a kiss that was anything but careful. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she melted against him with a soft sound that drove him mad. She tasted like everything forbidden, sweet and dangerous and entirely intoxicating. Her lips parted beneath his, and when his tongue swept into her mouth, she met him with an eagerness that suggested she was as lost in this as he was. His hands tangled in her hair, destroying the careful arrangement, and she did not protest. Instead, her own hands gripped his shoulders, then slid to the back of his neck, holding him as if she feared he might vanish. No danger of that. Damien was drowning in her, in the feeling of finally having her in his arms where she belonged. She fit against him perfectly, all soft curves and warm surrender, and he wanted to explore every inch of her until he had memorized her completely. But this was madness. Wonderful, terrible madness. With effort that cost him dearly, Damien pulled back. They were both breathing hard, and Juliet's eyes were dazed, her lips swollen from his kisses. She looked thoroughly compromised and absolutely beautiful. "This cannot happen," he said, though his arms remained locked around her. "Juliet, I am your guardian, your protector. This is wrong." "It feels right." Her fingers traced patterns on his chest. "More right than anything I have ever felt. That does not make it proper." "I care nothing for proper." She met his gaze steadily. "I care only for this, for you. Do you want me to go? To pretend this never happened? Can you truly do that?" "No, 1,000 times no." "But your reputation is already in question. I live alone with an unmarried duke, Damien. Society will talk regardless. At least let them talk about something real. You deserve better than this, than me. That is not your decision to make." Juliet's voice was firm. "I am not asking for seduction, if that is your concern. I am asking for honesty, for the chance to see where this might lead. Unless—" doubt crept into her expression. "Unless you do not truly want me? If I have misread—" "You have misread nothing." Damien's arms tightened around her. "I want you more than my next breath, but I am trying to do the honorable thing. Then honor me by being honest." She smiled, though tears glittered in her eyes. "Honor me by admitting what we both feel. We can determine the rest as we go, but please, do not push me away out of misguided nobility. I could not bear it." Damien looked down at her, at this impossible woman who had turned his carefully ordered life upside down. He knew he should be stronger, should resist. But he was only a man, and she was asking for so little. Merely honesty, merely the acknowledgement of what had been growing between them for months. "I love you." The words fell from his lips like a vow. "Heaven help me, Juliet. I love you. I have for weeks. And it terrifies me because I do not know how to do this, how to balance what I feel with what I owe to honor and propriety and your father's memory." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Then we shall figure it out together. But please do not make me face that future without knowing you feel as I do, because I love you too, Damien. So very much." He kissed her again, softer this time, a seal on promises made and confessions given. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, breathing her in. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now." Juliet's smile was tremulous. "Now we stop pretending, stop hiding, and we see where this leads us. Juliet, I cannot court you properly. You are my ward. The impropriety, then marry me." The words were simple, direct. "Not now, perhaps, but soon. When my mourning ends, make me your wife instead of your ward, and let society gossip all they like. You would marry me." Damien pulled back to look at her properly. "After everything between our families, after all the darkness in my past? I would marry you because of who you are, not despite it." Her hand cupped his face. "You are the man I want, Damien Veilhart. The only man I will ever want. If you will have me." "If I will have you?" he laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "Juliet, having you would be the greatest honor of my life. But are you certain? There is no urgency. We can wait." "I do not want to wait." She stepped back, her eyes serious. "I have thought of nothing else for weeks. I love you. You love me. We are neither of us children. Why should we wait when we both know what we want? Because society expected me to hate you." Juliet's smile turned impish. "I have already disappointed those expectations spectacularly. What is one more scandal?" Damien found himself grinning despite everything. "You are trouble, Lady Juliet Everthorne." "Yes." She wound her arms around his neck. "But I am your trouble now. You promised my father you would protect me. I'm afraid that means you are rather stuck with me." "There is nowhere else I would rather be stuck." He kissed her once more, long and deep and full of promise. "Very well. We shall do this properly. I will speak with your father's solicitors, ensure your inheritance is protected. Then, when your mourning ends, I shall court you as you deserve, though we shall have to endure a great deal of gossip." "Let them gossip." Juliet's eyes sparkled. "I rather enjoy the idea of scandalizing London society. The War Duke and his enemy's daughter. They shall dine on that story for years." "Undoubtedly." Damien pulled her close again, unable to stop touching her now that he had given himself permission. "But I do not care what London thinks. I care only that you are happy, that you are certain this is what you want." "I have never been more certain of anything." She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you, Damien, and I am going to love proving to you that you deserve to be loved." Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in Damien's chest. Hope, he realized. After so many years of ice and emptiness, Juliet had brought warmth back into his life. She had made him feel again, dream again, hope again. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "My fierce, impossible, wonderful girl. I shall spend the rest of my life ensuring you never regret this choice." "I could never regret choosing you." Juliet tilted her face up for another kiss. "Never." They stood there before the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, while outside the snow continued to fall. Tomorrow would bring complications, solicitors and negotiations and careful planning. But tonight there was only this: two hearts that had found each other against all odds, two souls that had chosen love over duty, passion over propriety. The War Duke had finally surrendered, and in surrendering he had won everything that mattered. Spring came to Ironmore with a violence of colour that seemed almost inappropriate after the long, stark winter. But Juliet loved it. The explosion of wildflowers across the moors, the return of birdsong, the way the ancient stones of the estate seemed to warm and soften in the lengthening days. Her mourning period had ended in March, and with it, the careful pretense they had maintained for the outside world. Not that they had been particularly successful at hiding their feelings. The servants surely knew, and Mrs. Thornby had developed a knowing smile whenever she saw them together, but there was a freedom now in being able to acknowledge it openly. Damien had been true to his word. He had spoken with her father's solicitors, ensuring her inheritance was properly protected and legally separate from his own holdings. He had written to the few remaining Everthorne relatives, informing them of his intention to marry Juliet once a suitable interval had passed. Most had been too shocked to respond with anything but stuttering congratulations. London, predictably, had gone wild with gossip. The War Duke marrying his enemy's daughter. The papers could not decide if it was romantic or scandalous. Invitations poured into Ironmore. Everyone wanted to see this unlikely couple for themselves. Damien had ignored most of them, protective of their privacy, and wanting to give Juliet time to adjust before throwing her into the shark-infested waters of London society. But eventually they would have to face the world, and Damien was determined to do it right. "We shall go to London next month," he announced over breakfast one April morning. "The season will be in full swing. I want to present you properly, show the world that you are my intended bride, and not some unfortunate ward I have been saddled with." Juliet looked up from her correspondence with amusement. "I was unaware I had ever been considered unfortunate." "You know what I mean." Damien reached across the table to take her hand. "I want to give you everything you should have had. A proper season, proper courtship, proper introduction to society as my future Duchess. I need none of that." She laced their fingers together. "I have you. That is everything. Nevertheless, he raised her hand to his lips, you deserve to be celebrated, not whispered about, and I intend to ensure that happens. Very well. Juliet's eyes danced. But I warn you, I shall expect you to dance with me at every ball, all the waltzes at minimum. I do not dance. You do now. She grinned at his expression. If I must face London society as the scandalous ward-turned-bride of the War Duke, then you must face the even greater horror of the ballroom. Fair is fair. Damien groaned, but he was smiling. You will be the death of me, woman. Nonsense, I am giving you life. She stood, moving around the table to perch on his lap in a way that would have scandalized any proper chaperone. Besides, you promised to make me happy. Dancing with me at balls seems a small price to pay. When you put it like that, he pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. Very well, I shall dance, but only with you. Only with me, she agreed, then kissed him soundly. The weeks that followed were a flurry of preparation. Juliet needed a new wardrobe befitting a future duchess, and London's finest modistes descended upon Ironmore with fabrics and patterns. Damien watched with amusement, as his normally quiet estate was overtaken by chattering women and endless discussions of hemlines and trimmings. But he also watched Juliet come alive in a new way. She had been healing these past months, the sharp edges of her grief softening into something more bearable. Now, with a future to look forward to, she bloomed like the moors in spring, all energy and excitement and irrepressible joy. She made him laugh constantly. She challenged him in their chess games and their discussions. She played piano and sang in a clear, lovely voice that filled the halls. She rode across the estate like she had been born to it, learning the tenants' names and concerns, already taking on the role of duchess with natural grace. And at night, when propriety dictated they should part, they instead stole moments in the library or the music room, kisses that grew longer and more heated, touches that promised everything while still maintaining the last boundaries of propriety. Damien was determined to wait until their wedding night to fully claim her, but it grew harder each day. You are torturing me, he murmured one evening, pinning her against the library door after what should have been a chaste good-night kiss had turned into something far more intense. Am I? Juliet's hands were in his hair, her body pressed against his in ways that made rational thought impossible. You could always move the wedding date closer. We have already moved it once. They had initially planned to wait until June, but both had agreed that was far too long. The new date was late May, less than a month away now. I will not have anyone suggest I rushed you into this. Let them suggest whatever they like. She nipped at his lower lip. I would marry you tomorrow if you would permit it. Tempting. His hands spanned her waist, holding her close. But I want to do this right. I want you to have the wedding you deserve, with all of London watching as I make you my duchess. Very well. She sighed dramatically. I suppose I can wait a few more weeks. But you are certainly making it difficult. I? He pulled back to look at her with mock severity. You are the one who keeps finding excuses to be alone with me, who keeps looking at me with those eyes, who keeps kissing me until I forget my own name. Guilty. She smiled unrepentantly. But can you blame me? You are terribly handsome when you are trying to be honorable. It makes me want to be very dishonorable indeed. Damien groaned. You will be the death of me. So you keep saying. Yet here you are, still breathing. She kissed him once more, then slipped from his arms before he could stop her. Good night, my love. Dream of me. I always do, he said quietly, watching her leave. It was true. She filled his dreams as thoroughly as she filled his waking hours. Damien had never imagined he could feel this way. This consuming love that made everything else seem pale by comparison. He, who had been so cold, so controlled, now found himself completely undone by one impossible woman, and he would not change it for anything. Their arrival in London caused exactly the sensation Damien had predicted. The Duke of Ironmore, so long absent from society, returning with his beautiful ward on his arm and a wedding date announced for the end of the month. The scandal-mongers nearly swooned with delight. Every ball, every soirée, every garden party suddenly included pointed invitations to the couple. Damien accepted enough to satisfy propriety and refused the rest. He was not interested in parading Juliet through every drawing room in Mayfair. But he did want to establish her place as his future duchess, to show London that she was not some shameful secret, but a woman he was proud to marry. The first ball was at the Duchess of Marlborough's residence, a glittering affair with what seemed like half of London in attendance. Damien saw the stairs as they entered, the whispers behind fans, the frank assessment in every eye. He felt Juliet's hand tighten on his arm, her only sign of nervousness. "Steady," he murmured. "Remember, you are about to be the Duchess of Ironmore. They should be nervous of you, not the reverse." She glanced up at him with a smile. "Easy for you to say. You are accustomed to being stared at. And you are magnificent." He covered her hand with his. "Let them stare. They will see only what I already know, that you are the most remarkable woman in this room." Flatterer. But color touched her cheeks, and she stood straighter. They made their way through the crowd, accepting congratulations that ranged from genuine to barely concealed curiosity. Damien kept Juliet close, his message clear. She was under his protection, and anyone who thought to slight her would answer to him. When the music started, he led her onto the floor for the first waltz. The crowd parted, watching, and Damien realized this was a test. The War Duke, who never danced, taking the floor with his controversial bride-to-be. All of London was waiting to see what would happen. He looked down at Juliet, at her eyes bright with nervousness and trust, and something fierce and protective surged through him. Let them watch. Let them judge. He knew the truth of what lay between them. "Ready?" he asked softly. "With you?" "Always." They began to dance, and everything else faded. Damien had not been lying when he said he did not dance. He had avoided ballrooms for years. But Juliet made it easy, following his lead with natural grace, her body moving in perfect synchronization with his. They fit together as naturally on the dance floor as they did everywhere else. "They are all watching us," Juliet murmured. "Let them." Damien pulled her infinitesimally closer than propriety strictly allowed. "I care only what you think." "I think," she said, her eyes soft, "that I am the luckiest woman in England." "No." He turned her in a spin that made her laugh. "I am the lucky one. You have given me everything I did not know I needed." "Prettily said, Your Grace. Perhaps you should write poetry." "I am content to leave the poetry to others." He smiled down at her. "I prefer to show my love in other ways." The blush that colored her cheeks made him want to kiss her right there in front of all of London, but he restrained himself, barely. There would be time enough for that once she was truly his. As they danced, Damien noticed the whispers beginning to change. The open curiosity was softening into something else, approval, perhaps, or at least fascination. Several older ladies were nodding approvingly. A few younger ones were looking at them with something like envy. By the end of the waltz, the tide had turned. The War Duke and his lady were not a scandal to be condemned, but a romance to be celebrated. The story was simply too good. Enemies' children finding love, sworn hatred transformed into devotion. It had all the elements of a Gothic novel, and London society loved a good story. The rest of the evening passed in a whirl of introductions and congratulations that seemed far more genuine. Juliet charmed everyone she met, her natural wit and warmth winning over even the most skeptical matrons. Damien watched with pride as she navigated the social waters with grace, proving that she was more than ready to be his Duchess. But the most satisfying moment came when they encountered Lord Westbrook, one of Lucien Everthorne's oldest enemies, and a man who had made no secret of his interest in acquiring Juliet's fortune through marriage. "Your Grace." Westbrook bowed, his eyes sliding to Juliet with undisguised calculation. "Lady Juliet, how delightful to see you both. I confess I was damn surprised to hear of your engagement." "Were you?" Damien's voice could have frozen water. "I cannot imagine why. Lady Juliet and I have been most happy at Ironmore these past months." "Quite." Westbrook's smile did not reach his eyes. "One wonders what dear Lucien would have thought of such an arrangement." "My father," Juliet said clearly, "trusted his grace with my safety and my future. I honor that trust by accepting the hand of a man I love and respect. I cannot imagine he would want anything less for me." The steel beneath her polite words made Damien want to cheer. Westbrook's face tightened, but he managed a stiff bow. "Of course. My congratulations to you both." As he walked away, Juliet turned to Damien with a fierce smile. "I do not like that man." "Neither do I." Damien pulled her close under the guise of leading her to the refreshment room. "But you handled him perfectly. You will make a formidable duchess." "I have an excellent teacher." She glanced up at him through her lashes. "When may we leave? I find I have had quite enough of London society for one evening." "Eager to have me to yourself?" he teased. "Always." Her hand tightened on his arm. "Take me home, Damien. To Ironmore, where we do not have to share each other with hundreds of curious strangers. Soon." He pressed a kiss to her temple, not caring who saw. "After the wedding, we shall return to Ironmore and hide away for as long as you like. But first, I must show all of London what they will never have. The most extraordinary woman I have ever known, who somehow agreed to be mine." "Not somehow." Juliet's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Inevitably. We were always meant to find each other, Damien. Even our father's hatred could not prevent it." "No." He looked down at her, this woman who had transformed his life. "Nothing could have prevented this. I think I have been waiting for you my entire life without knowing it." "Then the wait is almost over." She smiled through happy tears. 3 more weeks, and I shall be your duchess, your wife, yours in every way that matters. You are already mine." Damien's voice was rough with emotion. "You have been since the moment you walked into Ironmore in the rain, looking like a storm given human form. I just did not realize it yet." "Then I suppose," Juliet said softly, "we have both been very foolish, wasting all that time fighting what we felt." "Not wasted." He pulled her into an alcove, stealing a moment of privacy. "Every moment led us here, and I would not change a single one, because they brought me to you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a promise of everything to come, and Juliet melted into him, her arms coming around his neck, her heart beating against his. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. 3 weeks, Juliet whispered. "I do not know how I shall survive 3 more weeks." "Together." Damien rested his forehead against hers. "As we have done everything else. Together." The wedding took place on a perfect May morning at St. George's Chapel in Mayfair, with all of London society in attendance. Juliet wore white silk embroidered with silver thread, her dark hair crowned with orange blossoms. She looked like a queen, like an angel, like everything beautiful Damien had never thought to have. When she walked down the aisle toward him, his breath caught in his throat. This impossible, wonderful woman was about to become his wife. The ceremony passed in a blur of solemn vows and ancient words. Damien spoke his promises clearly, meaning every syllable. When it came time to pledge herself, Juliet's voice rang out strong and sure, her eyes never leaving his. "I, Juliet Margaret Everthorne, take thee, Damien Alexander Valehart." The names that had been enemies for so long, now united. The families that had hated across generations now joined. It felt like more than a marriage. It felt like healing, like redemption, like the ending of an old story and the beginning of something new. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Damien pulled Juliet into his arms and kissed her thoroughly. Propriety be damned. Let London see. Let them all see how much he loved this woman, how proud he was to call her his. The congregation erupted in applause. Damien pulled back just enough to see Juliet's face, flushed, laughing, radiantly happy. "Hello, wife," he murmured. "Hello, husband," she grinned. Was that kiss entirely appropriate for a church? Probably not. He tucked her hand into his arm. "Shall we scandalize them further by running down the aisle?" "Do not tempt me." But her eyes sparkled. "Though I confess I am eager to begin our life together, preferably somewhere far from curious eyes." "Your wish," Damien said, leading her down the aisle through a shower of rose petals, "is my command." The breakfast reception that followed was lavish, held at Ironmore House in London. Damien had spared no expense. He wanted Juliet to have everything, to feel cherished and celebrated. But all through the toasts and the congratulations, and the endless parade of well-wishers, he was aware only of her hand in his. Her smile meant only for him, the way she leaned into him as if they were the only 2 people in the room. Finally, blessedly, it was time to leave. They were returning to Ironmore proper for their honeymoon. No grand tour, no fashionable destinations, just the 2 of them and the wild moors they both loved. As the carriage pulled away from London, Juliet sighed with relief. "At last. I thought we would never be alone." "Regrets?" Damien asked, though he knew the answer. "None." She moved to sit beside him rather than across, curling against his side. Though I confess I'm glad the performance is over. Now I have you entirely to myself. You do indeed. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. For the rest of our lives, you have me, for better or worse. It will be better. She tilted her face up to his. I shall make certain of it. Of that, Damien said, capturing her lips in a kiss that promised everything the night would bring. I have no doubt. 1 year later. Iron Moor in spring was paradise. Damien stood at the window of the nursery, watching dawn paint the moors in shades of gold and rose. Behind him, his wife slept in the chair by the cradle, exhausted from a long night with their son. Alexander Lucien Veilhart, 6 weeks old, slept peacefully in his cradle, tiny fists curled near his face. He had his mother's dark hair and what Damien suspected would be his father's blue eyes, though it was early yet to tell. He was perfect, impossibly, miraculously perfect. Damien had not known it was possible to feel this much, this overwhelming love for such a small creature, this fierce need to protect and provide. Fatherhood had transformed him even more thoroughly than marriage had, breaking open parts of his heart he had not known existed. He heard Juliet stir and turned to find her watching him with sleepy eyes. You are awake early, she murmured. I wanted to watch the sunrise. He moved to her, dropping a kiss on her forehead. And to watch you both. I still cannot quite believe this is real. It is very real. She stood, stretching with a wince, as my aching back can attest. Our son has excellent lungs. He does indeed. Damien pulled her into his arms, holding her close. You are magnificent, you know, the way you have taken to motherhood, the way you manage the estate and the household, and still find time to drive me mad with wanting you. Do I? She looked up with a smile. Drive you mad? Constantly. He kissed her properly, thoroughly, until they were both breathless. I love you more with each passing day. I did not think that was possible, yet here we are. Here we are, she agreed softly. A family. The last thing either of our fathers would have expected, and yet somehow exactly right. Your father knew. Damien rested his cheek against her hair. I think he saw what I could not, that we were meant for each other, that only love could end the hatred between our families. He would have loved Alexander. Juliet's voice caught. I wish he could have met his grandson. He would be proud of you. Damien pulled back to look at her. As I am. You have taken everything, loss and grief and scandal, and transformed it into this, into us, into a family and a future that neither of our fathers could have imagined. We did it together. She cupped his face in her hands. You gave me a home when I had none, love when I thought I would never feel it again, purpose when I was lost. Everything I am now, I am because of you. No. He caught her hands, kissing each palm. You have always been extraordinary. I merely had the good fortune to see it. A small cry from the cradle interrupted them. Alexander was awake, his face scrunched in that particular expression that meant he was hungry. Juliet moved to pick him up, settling into the chair to nurse him while Damien watched. His wife and his son, his entire world contained in this room. What are you thinking? Juliet asked, noticing his expression. That I am the most fortunate man alive. Damien sat on the arm of her chair, one hand gentle on his son's head. That I never imagined I could have this, that sometimes I fear I will wake and find it was all a dream. It is no dream. Juliet leaned into him. This is real. We are real. And we have the rest of our lives to prove it to each other. The rest of our lives, Damien repeated softly. I rather like the sound of that. They sat together as the sun rose fully, painting Ironmoor in light. Outside, the moors bloomed with spring flowers. Inside, the house that had been so cold and empty now rang with life and laughter and love. The war duke had laid down his armor. The enemy's daughter had become a duchess, and together they had built something more powerful than either of their father's hatred, a love that would endure through all the seasons of their lives, a family that would heal the wounds of the past, a legacy that would last for generations. In the end, honor had been kept and oaths fulfilled, but more than that, two hearts had found their home in each other, and that, Damien thought as he watched his wife with their son, was the greatest victory of all. I love you, he said quietly. Juliet looked up, her eyes soft. And I love you. Now and always. Now and always, Damien agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. My fierce, impossible, perfect wife. Outside, spring continued its ancient dance across the moors. Inside Ironmore, the Duke and Duchess of Ironmore began another day of the life they had built together. A life of love, of laughter, of family. A life that proved love could indeed conquer all. Even the deepest hatred, even the coldest heart, even the war within a duke's soul. The end. Dear listener, tonight I'm not going to tell you that everything happens for a reason. I'm not going to say that your pain had a purpose, or that time heals all wounds, or any of those phrases you've heard 1,000 times before. Instead, I want to tell you about something Damien discovered that changed everything. The enemy was never on the outside. For years he believed Lucian Everthorne was his greatest adversary. He built his entire life around that hatred, that rivalry, that bitter certainty. And then, in one afternoon, it all crumbled. Because the real enemy wasn't Lucian at all. It was the story Damien had been telling himself about who he had to be. The War Duke, the man of ice, the one who could never soften, never surrender, never allow himself to want something beautiful. Right now, some of you are fighting battles that no one else can see. Not with other people, with yourselves, with the voice that says you're too old for new dreams, with the belief that your best days are behind you, with the fear that if you reach for joy, it will be snatched away like everything else has been. But what if that voice is the real enemy? What if the story you've been telling yourself about what's possible is the only thing standing between you and something extraordinary? Juliet walked into Ironmore believing she was entering the house of a monster. Instead, she found a man who had forgotten he was allowed to be human. And by simply refusing to accept his coldness, by insisting he was more than his armor, she gave him permission to remember who he really was. Maybe tonight, you need to give yourself that same permission. Permission to want something, even if it seems impractical. Permission to feel joy, even while you're still carrying grief. Permission to begin again, even though you've already lived so many lifetimes. Permission to be soft in a world that told you to be strong. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Softness is strength. Allowing yourself to hope again after disappointment, that's courage. Opening your heart after loss, that's bravery. Choosing to believe in possibility when experience has taught you to expect pain, that's not foolishness, that's faith. So tonight, as you close your eyes, I want you to release one thing, the belief that you've missed your chance. You haven't. Your story isn't over. It's just becoming more interesting. The chapters ahead may not look like the ones you planned, but they could be even better, richer, deeper, more true. Rest now. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the worries of tomorrow stay in tomorrow where they belong. You are safe in this moment. You are enough in this moment. You are exactly who you're supposed to be in this moment. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, you get to wake up and discover what happens next in your own beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect story. Sleep well, dear friend. You are more loved than you know, more capable than you believe, and more deserving of joy than you've allowed yourself to imagine. From all of us at Legends of the Fall, thank you for letting us be part of your evening. May your dreams be peaceful, your rest be deep, and your tomorrow be filled with unexpected grace. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking, leaving a comment, and sharing it with someone who might need a little emotional escape today. From the bottom of our hearts, your support means everything to us. It's what keeps us motivated to continue telling these stories full of love, redemption, heartbreak, healing, and hope. Every click, every word of encouragement in the comments, every share, it truly helps us keep going. And remember, at the end of this video, another beautiful story suggestion will appear. Click it and be swept away once again by another unforgettable tale. Thank you for being here. The Legends of the Fall team.